Today is the International Day against homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia. And while the world has come a long way in the last few decades, some countries, like the US and Uganda, are passing laws that continue to oppress the LGBTQ community. Laws that literally could mean the difference between life and death.
They're having third graders declare pronouns. We're not doing the pronoun Olympics in Florida. It's not happening here.
On the International Day against homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed into law a bill that bans gender-affirming medical care, such as puberty blockers or hormone therapy for transgender youth, and also enacts obstacles for adults to access treatment.
This will permanent outlaw the mutilation of minors. It will outlaw the surgical procedures and experimental puberty blockers for minors. It will also require any adults receiving these surgeries to be informed about the irreversible nature.
Taking effect in the third most populous U.S. state, the law escalates a Republican political strategy to pursue bills restricting gender rights. More than 500 bills affecting LGBTQ matters have been proposed across the U.S., and at least 48 have been enacted, according to the Human Rights Campaign. In some cases, legislation has sought to charge parents and doctors with child abuse if they provide treatment to transgender youth.
You have a movement amongst, I would say, rogue elements of the medical establishment to do things that is basically the mutilation of minors. I mean, they're trying to do sex change operations on minors, giving them things like puberty blockers and doing things that are irreversible.
It's comments like these that LGBTQ advocates say keep young people and adults alike in the closet, struggling alone, unable to live their lives to the fullest and express their identity in the way that they want.
The things that you do to us in the LGBTQ plus community will turn around and crumble back to you. What you sow, you shall reap.
In addition to Florida, at least 14 other states have banned treatments for transgender youth, although many face legal challenges in the courts. Meanwhile, in Uganda, this month, the government there passed one of the world's strictest anti-LGBTQ bills. The new bill includes the death penalty for so-called aggravated homosexuality and a 20-year sentence for promoting homosexuality, which activists say could criminalize any advocacy for the rights of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer citizens.
Ugandans, let's protect our values, our virtues. We have a culture to protect. The Western world will not come and rule Uganda.
But LGBTQ allies say we don't have to look far to see the discrimination, hate, and oppression the community faces. Because even here in Canada, those who identify as LGBTQ face their own battles. Joining us now is Professor Michael Woodford from Wilfrid Laurier University, who researches a variety of LGBTQ-related topics. Professor, Ron DeSantis signed a ban on gender-affirming treatment for transgender minors today in Florida. This is really just the tip of the iceberg in terms of anti-LGBTQ legislation in the states. What is the most concerning about these new laws?
Well, I think, as you said, it's sort of the tip of the iceberg, and it's quite alarming, the number of anti-LGBTQ bills and how these are becoming laws in the U.S. And certainly what's alarming about them is the removal of care for individuals. So in terms of gender-affirming care for young people, what that means for one's identity, but also what it means for one's mental health and their well-being overall. Also, we have legislation related to the censorship and the regulation of educational curriculum, not being able to talk about gender and sexuality. So let's think about what that means for somebody who might be questioning their gender or questioning their sexuality. So there's not that opportunity to think about that in terms of the range of gender and sexuality. It's really driving gender and sexuality into the closet.
What challenges do LGBTQ people face around the world?
Well, if we think around the world, we have, the U.S. is a great example, sadly, in terms of anti-LGBTQ legislation. So access to healthcare, access to educational services, then employment, seeking employment, all of those kinds of areas of discrimination, issues of recognition of same-sex relationships, Then if we go sort of further around the world, we think about the bill that just became law in Uganda, where Uganda had already criminalized same-sex relations, but they have now criminalized identifying as being a member of the LGBTQ community, and somebody could be serving a prison term because of that. And so that oppression and marginalization is just so alarming. And then what does it mean for somebody who, may be part of that community? We also have to think about what happens in our own neighborhoods, our own, back doors in our own communities here in Canada. And, my own research focuses a lot around university and post-secondary campus environments. And, our research highlights, the marginalization and the victimization that queer and trans students still experience. In a report that we submitted to a standing committee on the health of 2S LGBTQ Canadians, we were able to highlight from national survey data, great significant differences in victimization in terms of sexual violence and also physical attacks, that LGBTQ students were facing much higher rates than their cisgender heterosexual counterparts.
In what ways can cis people be allies?
So in terms of what can we do and what should we do as allies, is certainly we need to start by educating ourselves. We need to understand what is happening, also what those consequences are and how they impact individuals. And we might think, oh, legislation doesn't matter, or, it's just, or even, the legal debates, the political debates about LGBTQ rights, it doesn't really matter. Those things matter. It creates a particular hostile social environment. Imagine having your identity and your right to exist questioned.
Thanks so much for joining us, Professor.
My pleasure.